Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 5:47 a.m. East Coast time. It is Monday, the best day of the week. It is October 21st, start of a new week. It is week 8 coming forward, but we're finishing up week 7 with a Monday Night Football Showdown slate. $1.6 million prize pool, $400,000 to first, and it's a slate where, man, if you like uncertainty, which is a Showdown slate in general, so I'm sure you have some pleasure and desire for uncertainty, you're getting in on this slate. There's no doubt about it. So before we get into it, welcome. If you are new here, my name is Sal Vetri. I do cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, MLB, WNBA, and the NBA streets. You're listening on the podcast version. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Hope those ears are doing well over there. Listen to the video version. You can see over my shoulder that I do have sort of an initial player pool if you're just trying to put together 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 lineups, right? If you're putting together 150, 50 plus, 20 plus lineups, you're going to have more players in this, surely. You're going to want to have that. Otherwise, you're restricting that player pool too much. You're probably taking on a little bit too much risk by not having enough variance in a variant slate, right? So with that said, before you get into it, you can hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. We're like 100 subscribers away from 13,000, so it's a pretty cool milestone to hit, another round number. So I really appreciate each and every single one of you. If you want my Monday Night Football tiers, if you want any of my exclusive content, you can find that down below on Patreon. Click the link. I believe the 2 top tiers are filled up, but the main tier is still there, so you can check that out. NBA tiers will be opening in November on Patreon, but I will be putting out NBA content starting tomorrow, 2-game slate, and then I'll be on Awesome Show on Wednesday doing some NBA discussions on the strategy show in the morning with Josh Engelman. So that's kind of the stuff you can find. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on my social medias. Twitter's at Sal Vetri DFS. Social medias are just Sal Vetri. Facebook page and Instagram. Check me out. Follow me. Whatever you want to do. But yeah, let's get into it. Really appreciate the support, everybody. And yeah, so starting with this slate, man. Injury news are just crazy. We can't get a slate tonight. It makes sense, right? You're halfway through or so the NFL season. Everybody's going to be injured, but we can't get a showdown slate with some sort of consistency for who knows how long. So if we just start on the Patriots side, the Patriots are going to be without Josh Gordon. They're going to be without Rex Burkhead. They have a tentatively expected to play, is cautiously, whatever you want to say, Philip Dorsett, so it seems like he's a true game-time decision. Gunnar Olszewski, I don't know, I messed that up, but I can't pronounce the last name. Been trying to pronounce it since the preseason, no luck. He is questionable for this game. That's another wide receiver for them, so lots of injuries to the Patriots, right? We already know that they don't have James Devlin all year. We already know that they lost their kicker, Gostkowski, for the season. Lots of injuries for this game on the offense that are going to affect the game without a doubt. There might be one that I'm missing. I don't think there is. So moving forward with the Jets, lots on the Jets that you have to watch out for as well. On the Jets, what you're going to get is really the defense. CJ Mosley seems like he's going to be coming back for this game, which is very good from them. We're going to monitor the status of Henry Anderson, see if he's all good. He's another player on that defensive front, probably their best or second best run stopper on the defensive front. Mosley right there in top 5 in tackles and run stop. Expected to be back, so that's good for the Jets. The Jets, though, potentially going to be without 2 of their offensive linemen today. It does not seem, and as of right now, it does not seem that he's going to be suiting up, that they're going to have one of their guards, I believe it's pronounced Osmeli, and then it seems like they're going to have a limited Cahill. He seems like he might suit up. They're not sure yet. So it seems like they're going to be down at least 1 guard, and at best they'll have 1 guard out and another guard playing limited against this Patriots front that is giving up the least fantasy points to quarterbacks, giving up the second least fantasy points to running backs. So yeah, it's a slate that is potentially nightmarish. The Patriots also do not have tight ends Matt LaCosse and Ryan Izzo. They ended up signing Ben Watson back, right? He was suspended. They released him, then they signed him back. And they also ended up getting Eric Tomlinson, a tight end who used to be a Jet. I believe he used to be a Giant as well. I think they just signed him as well. So lots of moving pieces, lots of things that you should be looking out for this slate. I think that is the primary pieces of it, though. So with that said, I'm going to go through this player pool, which I have right now of about 12 players for a showdown slate. Is what I feel good about. If you're entering, 1 to 5, even maybe 10 lineups, that should be enough players for you to be choosing from. And we'll start a bit at the top, and I'll go through each and every one of them. So don't worry about the ones that have no's on them. We'll touch on them quickly. We'll go into some depth on the yeses and then the X's. So if you're on the podcast listening to this and you can't see it over my shoulder on the video, don't worry. I'll kind of enunciate every single thing that you would be seeing anyways. So at the top, Julian Edelman, $11,200. Yeah, I like Julian Edelman today. Look, when we get down through this 8, you're going to see that there is very limited spots where you're going to find good players or just any player really at all in a good spot. And a big reason why is, well, the Jets offense is going to be facing New England. But there's also pieces on the New England offense that doesn't have good matchups or don't have good matchups against this Jets defense, believe it or not, especially with the defense getting healthy. So Julian Edelman, yeah, he only ran. People think, yeah, he's definitely a slot wide receiver. We all know that. But last week when Josh Gordon goes down and there's no Philip Dorsett, you see Julian Edelman go outside for 49% of his snaps. Only ran 51% of his snaps in the slot last week with no Gordon or Dorsett. I'm going to expect Josh Gordon or Julian Edelman to be on the outside, even if Dorsett plays. I expect the Patriots to line up the majority of the time, and that doesn't mean every single snap. We saw it was about half the time last game. But I would expect the Patriots to line up with Julian Edelman on the outside, Philip Dorsett on the outside, and then Jacoby Myers in the slot when they go 11 personnel. And when they're not going 11 personnel, just 2 wide, maybe they go 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. I'm not sure they do that all that much with the injuries to their tight ends, but I think you have Dorsett and Julian Edelman on the outside there as well. So I do not think that Edelman will be the primary slot wide receiver tonight. That is important when you try and predict and project what the matchup will be for Julian Edelman. It will be much better for Julian Edelman. Brian Poole is probably the Jets' best cornerback, and he's primarily living in the slot this season. He's without a doubt their best cornerback. And then on the outside, you have Darryl Roberts, who has been improving but still bad, and Jermaine Johnson, who has just been flat out bad. So with that said, yeah, it's a better matchup for Julian Edelman on the outside. His price point's $11,200. I love playing wide receivers. It's really tough to get that into your captain spot. But I don't think it's an awful move. But I probably lean to get him in the flex more often, and I do like Edelman there. Second highest priced player on the slate. We're going to get into my strategy and my discussions around Tom Brady, but that's a spot where I do like Edelman. I'm probably going to be getting there. And especially when you're in the $11,000 range, I do prefer Edelman to Brady. Next up is James White. James White's only $7,400. The Jets are allowing over 6 receptions per game, so it's 31 receptions through 5 games. So it's like 6.1 or 6.2 receptions per game to running backs per week. So it's a good number. You saw last week James White ran 24 routes. He only played 38% of the snaps, but if you're going to go back and just check snap counts for James White, he doesn't play a ton of snaps, right? On the season, he's averaging 35% snaps, so he actually played more than he usually does last week. So it's all relative, right? That 38% snap count number might seem low relative to Le'Veon Bell, who's going to be playing 90+% of the snaps on average. But relative to James White's season, that was actually a little bit of a bump. And then you also have to factor in that there's no Rex Burkhead once again. So now second straight week without him. This is a month going on now where Rex Burkhead's played 1 game very limited. They're going to give more and more touches to White, you would imagine, especially if the games stay closer, a guy that you have on the field in short situations that you trust. And this game should stay closer than some of the other teams that the Patriots have been playing as. The Patriots go on the road here, obviously, for a get-up spot in a primetime Monday night game against the Jets, with the Jets getting much healthier on both sides of the ball. So I do like James White at $7,400. We know the PPR value. We know of the running back like James White. Since the beginning of last year, he leads all running backs in fantasy points per touch. Now, that's obviously because he doesn't have a ton of touches compared to them, and he's usually catching the ball, so it's bolstering his PPR format there. But yes, he's a very effective back. We all know that $7,400, I believe, is a favorable price point for him. Jamison Crowder at $7,000. I like it. Look, New England is a daunting defense. I don't have to explain how good this defense has been. You can say what you want about the matchups, the teams that they have faced. The best team that they have faced on offense for all 4 quarters was Daniel Jones and the Giants. And that offense, we all know, did not have Saquon, did not have Evan Ingram, did not have Sterling Shepard, did not have any of these guys, did not have Wayne Gallman, because other than that, it would be probably the Bills, but Josh Allen leaves that game halfway through. So definitely a defense that has been fantastic if you just look at, though, just neutralizing stats that don't try and take strength of schedule into account. Either way, though, obviously a very simple schedule for them so far, you can say at best. But the best spot to attack the Patriots, and it's really just trying to pick apart holes in the defense, but it is in the slot at Jonathan Jones. He's been the only below average cornerback the Patriots have had. And when I say the only one, like when we look at the next couple of Patriots cornerbacks on the outside, the other 3 guys that are their primary cornerbacks, even 4, man, these guys are scary. Like really, really shut down. I don't even care how bad the receivers they're playing and their quarterbacks have been so far. Any NFL defense that shuts a team down like that, yeah, they're good. They're really good. So Crowder's going to probably get to face Jonathan Jones in the slot, who has a 98.5 quarterback rating against, which is, it's not terrible. It's not fantastic like the other guys, but it's a little bit below average. So Tate went for 90-plus yards and a touchdown last week on Thursday Night Football against him. It was the only touchdown that a cornerback for the New England Patriots has allowed in man coverage. The only one. So you can take that with a grain of salt that this is a good matchup for Crowder, but Crowder's likely to see a team high in targets, and I think he does. I think on the outside you're going to have Jason McCourty on Robbie Anderson. That's not a good matchup for Robbie Anderson. Jason McCourty on Robbie Anderson because of the speed there. Jason McCourty Not allowed a touchdown so far this year. Jason McCourty has a 54 quarterback rating, passer rating against him so far. McCourty's only given up 2.8 receptions per game and 26.5 yards per game in man coverage with 0 touchdowns. I would expect a good amount of man coverage tonight on Robbie Anderson. And then you look at the other side of the field, and it's going to be Demaryius, I can't separate from you, Thomas. Demaryius Thomas in the last 3 seasons against top 20 cornerbacks has been absolutely atrocious. I imagine Demaryius Thomas, due to just the build of Stephon Gilmore and speed compared to McCourty, I imagine that you get Demaryius Thomas matched up against Stephon Gilmore, and that's not a good matchup for anybody. I don't even care that he's $5,000. Stephon Gilmore so far this season is only giving up in the mid-20s in yardage per game and is giving up less than 3 receptions per game as well. It is a extremely scary defense. This defense on a whole in the secondary unit is only giving up around 111 passing yards per game to the opposing team when you factor just the cornerbacks in man coverage. So obviously they'll play some zone. Obviously you can attack safeties, linebackers on the running back, and you can pick up more yards than that. But the cornerbacks, that's a league low on how many yards per game that this defense, holy cow, that this defense has given up. Yeah, it's been 122.3, not 111, 122.3 yards per game for the top 4 cornerbacks in man coverage. Yeah, that's extremely good. That is 30 yards per game each good on average. I already told you that you have guys below that number. Really tough spot for a lot of these guys. Crowder, the only one who's going to benefit, especially when you factor in that Darnold. We can say the narrative over and over. He likes throwing to the slot. Adam Gase will try and move the ball through the slot. And also when you look at the price point, he's right around the same price point as Anderson. Anderson surely has more upside in terms of his actual skill set week in and week out. But when you factor in matchups, I do prefer Crowder. Sony Michel at $7,800. Look, Sony Michel was really good last night on Thursday Night Football. The reason why people were tilting and on edge was because Brandon Bolden was coming in and taking his goal line carries and scoring touchdowns. And I think James White was taking some as well. So look, Sony Michel still gets all the touches there. He played the most snaps, 50% of the snaps last week with no Burkhead there. He ran 33 routes over the last 2 weeks. That's well above his career average. He ran 12 last week. I think he ran 21 the week before that, and they didn't need him as much in the second half last week as he was running routes the week before that. So his goal line work was robbed last week. I don't expect this to continue to happen. He exceeded on the ground. The Jets have a bottom 20, or actually the Jets are ranked 18th, so bottom half of the league run defense so far this year. He's $7,800, Sony Michel. If you're projecting him in this spot as a 9-point favorite on the road, not a great spot going on the road, but a 9-point favorite who is now seeing more routes run. If he's going to be running on average, 15 routes when there's no Rex Burkhead or somewhere around there, 16 routes over the past 2 weeks, he's probably more times than not going to find his way into 2 to 3 targets, especially the way that the Patriots scheme usually throwing shorter passes, especially to Edelman and the running backs. So, Michel at $7,800, I do like that. I do think it's a little bit too cheap. I think if Michel ends up getting in on the ground and one of those two goal line stands and not being pulled out of the game on the goal line, that his price point would probably be in the $8,000 range. So I think you're getting a pricing discount just because he got taken out on one goal line. And now maybe that's the truth moving forward, and that should be the value drop of that when you're not getting goal line work. But I'm hesitant to say that Sony Michel is never going to get another goal line carry for the New England Patriots. So I do like that at $7,800. Philip Dorsett, again, tentatively expected to play, so keep an eye on this. $6,600. Hopefully we don't get David Johnson like yesterday, where Johnson plays once or plays only for the first quarter, not even gets one carry and then doesn't play again. We'll check in on Philip Dorsett later today before the game locks, an hour and a half before they give us the news. $6,600. It is a good matchup though. On the outsides again is where you want to target it. The toughest matchup for New England is going to be their slot wide receiver. Edelman might be there at some points, but it's not too worried about him. Jacoby Myers should be there the majority of the time, and we'll get to Jacoby Myers, but he played over 70% of the snaps in the slot last week when Dorsett was out, and you had other guys on the outside, i.e. Julian Edelman, Gunner, some of those other players. Matthew Slater for a very short amount of the time. If Dorsett's on the outside at $6,600, I do like that. Patriots and Tom Brady have been very favorable to throwing him the ball. He's going to be a game time decision here. He's going to get more than likely, you probably see just not a specific matchup here. So Darrell Roberts stays on the right side of the field almost 90% of the time. I think it's 88% of the time. And you get Jermaine Johnson on the left side of the field about 90% of the time. So they just stay on one side of the field. They're not going to shadow for the most part. and they're not good enough to really shadow in man coverage. But Dorsett and Edelman, they'll pretty much move around, even Jacoby Myers. So there's not going to be a main spot where they stay. Dorsett's playing like 40% of his snaps in the slot. He's playing like the remaining 60%, each 30% on the other outside. So it's not like you're going to have one guy matching up against the other the entire time on the outside. But with that said, it's then that tells you, especially if he's not going to be in the slot as much as I don't expect him to, with Jacoby Myers kind of patrolling the slot for the majority of this game, no matter where Dorsett lines up if he's healthy, whether it's against Johnson, whether it's against Roberts, he's going to have a good matchup. And the same things can be said for Julian Edelman. So that is why I do like these outside receivers for the Patriots tonight. Sam Darnold is my last yes. Believe it or not, Sam Darnold. Look, this was one where I didn't know if I wanted to put him as a yes, but just thinking about game theory on a showdown slate, when you have 85+% of the time, I think now, factoring in this week's stato, and I was looking at the trends before the last showdown, 85% of the time, at least one showdown or at least one captain is needed in a showdown slate. Or one captain, obviously, that's 100% of the time. At least one quarterback is needed in a showdown slate. Now, obviously, that's 15% of the time you don't. You're playing 100 times, well, 15 times you don't need it. So that's a decent amount of the time. This might be one of those slates just due to pricing and matchup. But if you wanted to go to a quarterback, and I'm still deciding if I do want to go to one based on I haven't really built too many lineups out, but I think I go to Sam Darnold. Look, he's $2,600 less than Brady already. If you're playing Julian Edelman, I think it's extremely difficult to play Brady and Edelman and like your lineup or feel comfortable about it, especially when you can consider that there's going to be a ton of people playing Tom Brady and or Julian Edelman. If you're just going to fade one completely, I would fade Tom Brady, and I'm probably going to do that just due to pricing. Oh my God, Sal's fading Tom Brady. He's fading the GOAT, the guy who has the most Super Bowl rings. Yeah, it's a showdown slate where he's $11,600. And as we've seen on the last two showdown slates where quarterbacks are $11,600 or more, and I know Mahomes got hurt and Aaron Rodgers, but if you look at trends, quarterbacks that are over $11,500, and if there are multiple other players or at least one other player in the $11,000 range or $10,000 range or above, a lot of the times that quarterback is not the one who's needed just by default of if Julian Edelman has a good game today and then Sam Darnold has an average game, that combination is going to score more points and allow you to unlock better players due to the salary savings from Tom Brady to Sam Darnold of $2,600. So that is the main reason. It's strategy based. I don't like Sam Darnold's matchup. The Patriots are allowing the least fantasy points to quarterbacks, 7.3 fantasy points per game. Once again, we know how good this defense has been, but I do think it is important to point out that the best quarterback the Patriots have faced for 4 quarters this season is that last matchup of Daniel Jones, where his primary receivers were Rhett Ellison, a tight end, Cody Lattimore, Darius Slayton, a rookie, right? These guys that are not the greatest, and Golden Tate was the best weapon on the field with John Hillman in the backfield. That is the best quarterback they faced. Oh no, Sal, they faced Josh Allen. Yeah, Josh Allen left the game halfway through. I'm saying through a full game, right? When you actually get to play a full game against a quarterback and see what happens, because that Bills game was close while Allen was in there. And then also the second best quarterback they probably faced through a full game. It's between Colt McCoy and Ryan Fitzpatrick, whichever one of those guys you think is better. So yeah, the 7.3 fantasy points per game. It's obviously skewed when you factor in that Sam Darnold's not that type of player. He's much better than all those other quarterbacks I just listed. You can say what you want compared to Josh Allen. I think he's better than Josh Allen, but Allen didn't play the whole game, so I'm not really trying to compare that. So yeah, Sam Darnold, the Jets have the worst offensive line rating on the slate versus the New England defensive line, and that's a big reason why I might just not play a quarterback tonight. But if I was to play one, it would be Darnold due to the salary savings, due to the fact that yes, I think New England's defense is very good, but I do think that Sam Darnold is above the quarterback skill level and the overall offenses that New England has faced to hold those guys on average to 7.3 fantasy points per game. Darnold would be the quarterback I go to for $2,600 savings off Brady. Jets defense is a maybe for me. Look, Brady has looked bad in 33 to 50% of the snaps. Is somebody going to say it? I know people have been saying it. He's looked bad. He's looked like a 42-year-old quarterback. When he faces pressure, he has looked pretty weak, I would say. He's thrown a couple of duck passes. Some have ended in interceptions, even in the red zone this season. But look, you can say what you want about him this year. He's been very meh at best. But it's a $2,800 defense. It is a defense that is below the price of the kickers by a decent amount on this slate, $1,000 below and $800 below the 2 kickers on this slate. So you're getting a nice price savings. It's really a pricing play with some upside when you get CJ Mosley expected back now. Brady's been a little bit turnover prone when you factor in that the Patriots don't have Ryan Izzo, Matt LaCoste. They're down their main tight ends. They're putting tight ends out there like Ben Watson, who haven't played a snap this season, Eric Tomlinson, who in his career only has a handful of catches in like 40 games. So they're putting guys out there that don't really have a nice gel with their offensive line yet. So it should help. And then you take into account James Devlin has been out for the season of fullback to help with some sort of pressure and chip people. It should help the Jets, in theory, defensive line, especially since they're getting healthier. Now, that's me just trying to build a case for it. at the end of the day, it's a $2,800 defense that is getting put into your lineups because you like the pricing of it, and you hope that on average they score you around 8 fantasy points, which means they're going to have some interceptions, or they can just get a fluky punt block touchdown, right? Something weird. So at home on Monday night as an underdog, it's not the greatest spot to take a defense as an underdog, but when they're in an up game divisional matchup like this, I'll take a defense at 2,800. I do have some interest there. Le'Veon Bell at 9,200. Look, the guy's absolutely incredible. He'll play 90+% of the snaps. He should be running a ton of routes in this game. The only concern is that his price point is a little bit restricted. So if you don't go Sam Darnold, you probably do get the Le'Veon Bell just naturally. Same pricing range, but it's a brutal matchup for him. New England has allowed just 13.7 fantasy points per game to running backs. That's the second lowest in the league. They held Le'Veon Bell, albeit when Luke Falk was the quarterback week 3, to 10.5 fantasy points. And now you have the Jets likely to be without their guard, Osmelli, and then they're going to have Cahill, their center, questionable coming into this game. But even if he plays, he's banged up. He hasn't been practicing in full. So this is an interesting spot for Bell, because on one hand you say, oh, he scored 10.5 fantasy points with Luke Falk as his quarterback on the road in New England. Well, what can he do at home? Can he get me 16? 16 fantasy points from Le'Veon Bell at 9,200 if you build your lineup correctly. That could do it. So that's why Le'Veon Bell is not a no, but he's also not a yes, because it is important to point out that this matchup is brutal, and now you're going to be without 1 to 2 of your offensive linemen tonight in what is one of the worst run blocking advantages and overall just offensive line versus defensive line advantages according to Pro Football Focus on the entire slate. So I really think it comes down to whether you want Darnold or Bell. Thinking that you can have both of them in your lineup seems a little bit iffy to me, but again, that's something that 5% of the pool is going to do tonight is stack the Jets team heavy. So yeah, I think that Bell is a maybe, depending on how you feel about it. I probably get to him more just because I do think there's a lot of upside there, and I do think that these outside cornerbacks are going to absolutely shut down Anderson and Demaryius Thomas, and you're going to have to live through the middle of the field in the short passing through Bell and Crowder. So I prefer Crowder for a cheaper price point. Bell would be my next option in the Jets passing game, potentially overall offense if I don't get to Darnold. Tom Brady. Yeah, look, Tom Brady is doing his thing at 42 years old, leading another undefeated team. He's $11,600 on the Showdown slate. Like last Monday night when Rodgers was this expensive, and like Thursday night when Mahomes was $12,000. Mahomes was probably going to pay off that price tag, but we'll never know because he got injured. I just took those players out of my player pool. That's just the strategy I'm going with. It might be too bold for you or too uncomfortable for you to take a complete player or a player like Brady completely out of your player pool. But if I was to run 50 more lineups tonight, I would have 0% Tom Brady. And I already know that there's going to be a handful of people that come back to this video literally afterwards and when the week's into the next week and go, if Brady does pay off the tag, and go, oh, Sal, you really faded Tom Brady. How'd that go for you? I don't care. I'm going into the slate knowing my strategy, and my strategy is that if I play Julian Edelman, he is more times than not going to be needed and outscore Tom Brady if Tom Brady has a good game. And then all I need from there is another decently priced player, a.k.a. Le'Veon Bell and or Sam Darnold, to just do something good. Now, there's a lot of cheaper price players in that 7K range, so it's a little bit easier to fit Brady. But if Brady's ownership is going to come in around where I think it is, 50+, 60+% owned tonight, there's a chance that I do fade Tom Brady. This is a very good matchup when you consider outside cornerback play for the Jets. But we'll see. I've yet to put together too many lineups. If I had to lean one way, if lineups are restrictive at all by playing both Edelman and Brady, as I imagine they probably are, unless you're putting somebody garbage in your captain spot, like, I don't know, Ryan Griffin or something down there, then yeah, I'd probably just play Tom Brady. At the end of the day, I'm not trying to play the same lineup as everybody else and turn my $10 entry into 15. No, I'm trying to win the whole goddamn slate. I don't put this research in just to turn my entry fees into a min cash. And more times than not, if you play Brady and Edelman in the same lineup, you're probably going to turn it into a min cash. So I will probably take a stance there and not play him, just looking at trends. You don't need an $11,600 quarterback, especially when they don't have mobility. You rarely need that in a winning lineup when there's other high-priced players, especially on their same team. Julian Edelman, if Tom Brady throws him, if Edelman has 8 receptions for close to 100 yards and drops a touchdown tonight, well, yeah, you definitely need Edelman in your lineup. That doesn't mean you need Tom Brady in your lineup. So that's just my stance on that. It's a price play. Let me know what you think about that. Obviously, it's a bold take, but I'm not just fading the player. I'm fading his price tag on a Showdown slate where you have a salary cap. Ben Watson, 4,400 is interesting to me because Ryan Izzo's not playing, Matt LaCosse is not playing. The Patriots have been letting their tight ends run a ton of routes, not utilized heavily, but they are running a ton of routes. And when you factor in that he's only 4,400, I think it's a decent spot for him as the primary pass catching running back or pass catching tight end for this game. Now the issue is he hasn't run a snap all year. He was suspended, then he's cut. Now he's re-signed because they have another injury to Ryan Izzo, and Lacoste is out. So it's an interesting spot for him. $4,400. I imagine he leads all tight ends on this team. It's really just him and Eric Tomlinson in just routes run. But really, what you're looking for there is just touchdown upside. The Patriots, if they are banged up, say Dorsett misses, say Gunner misses, and now you're dealing with a wide receiver core of like pretty much just Jacoby Myers and Julian Edelman, and like a lot of slot play for maybe James White and Matthew Slater. Special teams has to come more on offense. Then maybe you see more Ben Watson. But I do think Philip Dorsett plays. I think Gunner actually plays too. And if that's the case, I don't think they need Ben Watson as much in the passing game as they're going to need more protection on the line. So $4,400, he's interesting if you want to take that risk. He is a pass-catching tight end, but he's also ancient, so you can get there if you want. I probably lean not to, but the price tag is nice. And the last two spots are kickers. For both kickers, I just say kickers are fine to get to, just only roster one. Don't put two kickers in your lineup. More times than not, 90+% of the time, 98+% of the time, that's not going to work. I would just choose one. I do think kickers are valuable at their price points if you're playing a lot of lineups. I do think they're valuable on slates where there's not a lot of value down below. On this slate, I don't think there's a lot of value down below. I don't think there's cheap players that you can get to with confidence. I think that the Jets' defense is cheap, but they're not a player; they're a defense. And then you have the two kickers. Those are only the real cheap plays I like. I think it's fine to get to one of these kickers, Nugent or Sam Ficken, whichever one you want. Obviously, the Patriots with Nugent have a higher team total, so that's probably the spot that I lean more. But look at field goal props, see which one has more field goal props projected for this game. But then when you look at these no's, look, I have Brandon Bolden as a no. He's 3,200. Like the guy played, or he's been playing limited snaps, like 12 and a half per week over the last 2 weeks. And now that's obviously because Rex Burkhead has been limited and not playing, so he's getting some more snaps, but he's only surviving on touchdowns. So you're telling me now that the guy who was in the like $800 or $1,000 range on the last couple of slates on showdowns is now $3,200 just because he's getting like one goal line carry a game or so? It's at a price point where if Brandon Bolden scores you 6.5 fantasy points, he has a 5-yard rushing touchdown. At $3,200, that might not be enough. Like, there's kickers on this slate that'll probably score around 8 to 10 fantasy points. Like, $3,200 is now a price point where Brandon Bolden has to do more for me. It's 5 or 4 fantasy points. Or if he catches a ball for 30 yards, it's 4 fantasy points. They're not doing it for me. So $3,200, the price point came up. I don't really want it. Patriots defense at $7,200. I get it. They've been absolutely fantastic, 20-plus point scoring in the majority of their games. But $7,200 is too much of a price point for me. It's just, I can't get there over James White or Jamison Crowder. At the end of the day, especially this one not being at home, it's going to be in Giants. It's going to be in Giants Stadium, yeah, but it's for the Jets. But with Sam Darnold back and healthy, the best quarterback they will have played. Look, if it was $6,200, I would think a little bit more about it. $7,200, in my opinion, is a bit restrictive. Robbie Anderson, we talked about his matchup on the outside. I don't like it. Jacoby Myers, I really like his price point. Jacoby Myers is the one player that as the day goes on, I might garner more interest in. It's just a matter of this is the worst matchup for the Patriots in terms of scheming. Jacoby Myers against Brian Poole, it's the worst matchup. We saw Tom Brady last week, although Jacoby Myers ran a ton of routes in that game last week. He played 73% of his snaps out of the slot, and he ran 24 routes last week, 24 out of the slot. Although you saw that, you still saw Tom Brady not targeting him at all, not looking his way at all. He was a guy who had a breakout preseason, looked absolutely fantastic. I think he's going to be good. Brian Poole's played the 7th most snaps in the slot this season, only allowing a passer rating of 71.5, nowhere near the 99.5 that Darryl Roberts is allowing on the outside, or the 111.1 that Jermaine Johnson is allowing on the outside. So just a lot tougher of a matchup, but the price point also indicates that he's a little bit cheaper. If Dorsett comes back, I really have no interest in Jacoby Myers. If Dorsett ends up being a late scratch or an inactive, an unexpected somewhat inactive, then my interest in Jacoby Myers goes up. But otherwise, I find the extra 1,000 to get to Dorsett, and I think on this slate, it'd be really easy to find the extra 1,000. Demaryius Thomas, no interest on the outside. A guy who, when he faces top cornerbacks, fails to get separation, really fails to even catch the jump ball. Stephon Gilmore should be on him for the majority of this game. Ty Montgomery, no interest in. If you're playing Ty Montgomery tonight, you might as well go all the way down and just play Bilal Powell. Ty Montgomery and Bilal Powell have ran the same amount of routes and played the exact same amount of snaps the last 2 weeks. And you get Bilal Powell for $1,600 cheaper. So no interest in Montgomery. Ryan Griffin has ran a lot of routes. He ran like 20-plus routes last week. There's still going to be no Chris Herndon for this game. He's doubtful. But the problem with Ryan Griffin is he's ran 123 routes this season. He has 8 catches for 45 yards. He has 12.5 fantasy points on the year in DraftKings on 124 routes. That's really bad. So more times than not, when you factor that in, and I get it, he had Luke Falk for pretty much every single game that he's playing outside of 2. So I get it, but at the end of the day, he's not really being utilized. He's not anywhere near a top 3, maybe not even top 4, 5 priority in this passing game. So when you factor in how he's been performing this season, if he runs another 20 routes tonight, more times than not, he scores you 2 to 2.5 fantasy points. So I'm not getting to Ryan Griffin. I think the price point's attractive at 1,400. It's obviously very touchdown dependent. So if you think he scores a touchdown, go for it. And that's about it. Braxton Berrios only played. He's a former Patriot. The last time that they played the Patriots, he actually played a lot of snaps. That was somewhat due to injuries, but only played 4 snaps last week, ran no routes, and then played 0 snaps the week before that. Don't expect much from him now that Anderson, now that they sent Demaryius Thomas, right? Don't really expect too much from him. Matthew Slater, a special team there pretty much. If Gunner and Dorsett are both out, then Slater actually probably becomes an option on the outsides. He's only played 11 total snaps this season, though, on offense. And that's about it. Below Powell at $200. If you want to punt a single player and try and get somebody in this $1,000 below range, I go to Bilal Powell. But again, he only has played 14 snaps the last 2 weeks. He played 12 snaps last week. He ran 6 routes over the last 2 weeks. Eric Tomlinson, a new tight end for the Patriots, a former Jet. In his career, he has 16 receptions in 39 games. That should tell you the type of player Eric Tomlinson is. He's not a pass-catching tight end. He's a blocking tight end. 16 receptions in 39 games. The guy catches a ball every 2.5 games. You factor that out over the course of a season, he's having like 7 receptions a season. Or 6.5 receptions a season. So Eric Tomlinson at $200. If you think he scores a touchdown, he might not even be needed still if he scores 6 fantasy points at $200. We saw a guy in Marvin Hall for Detroit catch like a 50-yard catch, have 6-point-something fantasy points, and not be needed at 3-digit pricing. So that's about it. The only thing I will say is keep an eye on Damian Harris. He's a rookie running back who excelled in the preseason, has yet to be active this season. They've been activating special teamer and playing over him Brandon Bolden as the third running back. But if they activate Damian Harris, you can be pretty confident that Brandon Bolden is not going to play that many offensive snaps. It's going to be more special team snaps. And then you can feel really uneasy about playing Sony Michel, because we've seen in the past, Bill Belichick will just give a guy out of nowhere in the running game 15 carries, all the goal line work, even more in Damian Harris. So keep an eye on the inactives. If Damian Harris is finally active, that probably means he's actually going to touch the ball. So that's where I'm at. It's a player pool of about 12 people. Appreciate you all tuning in. Depending on when you're watching this, I'll be live on the Pat Mayo Experience at 1 p.m. East Coast time, but then it'll archive on Pat's podcast. You can check that out, recapping last week, looking forward, waivers, injuries, rankings, whatever they might be, rankings in terms of just team rankings, power rankings. So check all that out. I'll be on Awesome on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 11 a.m. for football, and Wednesday for the NBA. NBA content will start on this channel tomorrow. Check out my exclusive content down below on Patreon if you would like. Follow me on my social medias at SalVetryDFS on Twitter, SalVetry on Facebook. Follow me, not my dad. That'd be kind of weird. And then lastly, Facebook page is just Sal Vetri. And yeah, if you do have a second to go to the Sal Vetri show on iTunes and leave a 5-star rate and review, especially if you're listening to this on iTunes right now, I would greatly appreciate that. You can follow the podcast on any platform, Spotify, iTunes, subscribe to it. Really does help reach more people. So appreciate you tuning in. One game showdown slate. Somebody, hopefully only one person, wins $400,000 tonight. 25% of the prize pool of a $1.6 million prize pool. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Sal Vetri. You already know that. Peace out, gang. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that video. I do apologize. I believe there was a bit of a quality drop in terms of just sound and microphone. I had my microphone, my external one, plugged in, but there was an update, so it made it not adapt. So everything's fine moving forward. I figured I'd put this at the end. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Above my head, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, I do ask you if you can please hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a good amount to reach more people. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's over there. Right in the corner is my @SalVetryDFS Twitter. And then above, you'll find my Patreon link. You can click on that if you want more exclusive content for me. Or a video is going to pop up, so why don't you check that one out as well. I think it's going to be beneficial for you. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.